Agent Romanoff. You miss me?
Okay, so here we go. We are back once again inside of PP Dish Soap, the rank 1 number 1 player in North America, and indisputably the best player in the region. He's finally back. In case you haven't realized, a lot of the top North American pros have actually not been streaming a lot of their games recently, and the reason why is because of the EWC qualifiers or the Esports World Cup. And because of that, it just shows that, you know, a lot of them don't want to leak their practices or their scrims or the way they're calming. So because of that, we have not been getting any streams from players such as Dish Soap, Soju, for example, who's just notorious for streaming every single day, but he himself has not been streaming a lot, if at all, either, just because he just wants to make sure that, you know, their team does well for the qualifiers. It looks like here that Dish Soap, though, is streaming just because at the end of the day, I believe to still qualify for regionals, which he still needs to make, you have to play a bare minimum of, I believe, 20 games a week. So he will be streaming every once in a while just to make sure that he plays out these games. So it looks like 2-1 start here, or rather, excuse me, for our 1-3 going into 1-4. Glove start with a TF pair and a Nitro opener. So TF is also the best reroll comp, I would say, right now, currently in the meta. So TF is definitely a very... How do I put what's the word I'm looking for? It's like a tempting option, if you will, but it's going to be one of those things that, like, with a glove start, it's definitely not looking too hot. We also looks like get more money as well, so despite getting the Darius as well, and TF being a good meta line for reroll, we're going to actually sell them to make sure that we make Econ instead. 2-1 augments Boombot, Carry, and Void Swarm. Immediately, just don't even click on the middle one. I'm the Carry now is probably one of the worst prismatic options that are available at the moment. It just falls off at a humongous cliff as the game continues, so despite the fact that you might be able to get some tempo out of the early game, and the fact that it's a might is really weird, it's just not good enough in the end game. It just feels super terrible. So definitely not something you can take in this spot. Build a Bud is also really great in terms of getting tempo. It's a little more consistent than I'm the Carry now, but it's still also in the same manner falls off a cliff, and not as big a cliff because sometimes you can still you can keep that three-star one cost for a very long time, but it's not usually good enough to win at lobbies, let alone sometimes top 4, especially in high elo lobbies. So we're definitely not going to be leaning Build a Bud. It's going to be between Boombot and Void Swarm. Void Swarm is pretty good, actually, generically speaking, as a generic combat augment that scales into the late game, especially if you're playing for first. It can cap out super high once you get to that third Void Swarm, but it is it's good, but I think Dish Soap is a bit more in a for fun mode here. I do think that you should reroll Boombot Crown here and click on Void. It's actually pretty close. Boombot Crown, despite the crowds being pretty weak in general, Boombot is actually one of the better ones that you can click on. So I do think that he's scopes around here to just check what his other options are. Tactician's Kitchen comes up as well. I do think that compared to Boombot Crown, Tactician's Kitchen is a little better. It's a little more flex, but it does still give you that Tactician's Cape after 6 rounds. So you still get a Fawn, and you're kind of guaranteed a good prismatic value, despite the fact that maybe your emblem might not be the best sometimes. But I think Dish Soap is in a bit more of a for fun mode, ends up clicking on Boombot Crown here. And again, I do think that in like a more, I believe Dish Soap even said it himself, that like in a more serious setting, he would probably not click on Boombot Crown and click on Tactician's Cape instead. But Boombot Crown, again, it's decent, it's good enough, and I think he's just in the mood to play a little bit of Boombot. In case you can't see it right now, his tracker's covered because my camera's over it, excuse me. But he's been playing, I think this is his 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th game of the night. So he's trying to get through a lot of his regional dailies just to make sure that he is good to go. Because I think he's traveling today at the time of recording this video to somewhere, I don't know. But that is what we're currently at. So we have a Spark with a Boombot on top of the Nidalee with Skarner in, so we have the 2 Boombot. And the name of the game here is just going to be Tempo. Now, you're going to also notice, by the way, in case you didn't realize already, Dish Soap has been scouting a ton, especially during the early game. And the reason is this. There are a ton of players who took prismatic options as their first 2-1 augment, and a lot of players are opting to go for lose streaks / like play super weak boards to try and econ as fast as possible, because typically prismatic augments 2-1 for economy and then lose streaking can build you up so much tempo and so much value that you're going to find yourself in a really good time once, you know, early stage 4 comes around and you're able to start rolling for your units and you have so much economy that you can stabilize super hard. Nowadays, you're seeing a lot of players opt to do this kind of strategy to play into Vex or to play into Brand. And Econ is sort of really the true name of the game here, because when you have Econ super early and you can build up those intervals very fast, you can actually just hit these units faster than everybody else and hit them in less gold on average compared to everybody else if you are the first to roll when there are none in the pool. That is why you are seeing nowadays, especially in level 8 metas, this is sort of like the go-to strategy. But on the contrary, when you are someone like in Digital's position where you can actually play for tempo and actually play for a win streak, it becomes significantly easier to do so, because you can get away with a win streak with significantly less. And in a spot like his, for example, where we're playing Nitro with like a Nidalee 2 as our main carry, it's still a good unit and our units are fine. We do have 6 with the Buggin, but generally speaking, this isn't going to always be a 5 win streak board. But again, Digital being PP did scout and managed to see that, hey, you know what, at the end of the day, our board is looking good enough in order to streak through, and he has no problem saying that there was at least 4 players with a Prismatic Econ Augment 2-1 trying to opt for this loose streak strategy. So when it comes to Boombot, what is the general name of the game? Boombot is a trait that falls off pretty hard, but that is slowly becoming less and less of a fact. Historically speaking, that was the case, but ever since the buffs and such, it's definitely become a bit more of a interesting option, and especially with the fact that Urgot does feel like a pretty strong 5 cost to cap out around with. So nowadays, whenever you think about Boombot and playing vertically within it, your game plan is to try to fast 9. So that usually means that you need to find something that's going to stabilize you throughout stage 4 and the mid game going into stage 5, and that something needs to be able to carry you. And at the very least, if you're gonna bleed, you don't bleed too hard when you get to 9, because you got to econ all the way back up. Relatively speaking, fast 9 generally wants pretty cheap boards on level 8 just to get you there, but it also generally means that you are bleeding throughout most of, if not all of, stage 4. So you really have to be careful and make sure that if you're gonna bleed all stage 4, that you have both the HP and the resources to pivot your board in a manner that will make sure that you are stable. In his case, Urgot is the end game goal, and in order to get to Urgot, what is he going to play on level 8? In general, when it comes to Boombot and Vertical Boombot, you're going to think about, and this is really any vertical as well, but you're going to think about the 4 cost. By the way, we got the 5 shoot going, very nice. So when it comes to 4 costs in the Boombot vertical, we're thinking about units like Cho'Gath. I think Cho'Gath is going to be the big one, and right now, Cho'Gath actually feels very, very good. So Cho'Gath is one of those units that he's not like a supreme tank by any means, but he's still one of those units that is like super, super strong. And he can definitely actually carry you with the vertical Boombot specifically, because he tanks so much damage, and then he is spitting that damage back out because of the Boombot trait. You might have also noticed slightly, just funny enough, he was hovering the Reforger over his Nidalee for a second, over the Spark and the Boombot. That's not because he thought that that was correct by any means. That was because some chatter was like, fuck it, you should Reforge it. And then he was like, oh yeah, maybe I should. And then he was like, no, I don't even know why I'm even entertaining it. So back to playing here with the 4 Boombot on our board with the 3 Nitro here. It is a bit awkward, but we do want this Jax 2 on our board, but it is what it is. We do have, I believe, a Morello Slam here, so we do have all our utility pretty early on. Spark is really nice because Boombot, the trait, does do AP damage. Morello is just super, super just open-ended, so you can just kind of do whatever here. And we do slam the bow here, but there's nothing else that we really need to slam specifically. He also slams the belt here just to hold it, because belt in general is just a very good component to have, especially for something like Cho'Gath. But let's talk about the 3-2 augments here: Mentorship, Titanic Titan, and Rolling for Days. Titanic Titan is definitely not an option here. I think at the end of the day, when it comes to choosing your augment here on 3-2, you really want to make sure you're choosing something that's going to keep your streak going, because again, our game plan is to try to get to 9. Rolling for Days could be used for tempo as well, depending on how you want to view it. Basically, the idea being is that if you do end up rolling here, I mean, ideally you have pairs or very specific units you need to look for, but Rolling for Days could be used here as an econ augment, but also to tempo with, depending on what upgrades you could potentially find. Mentorship in general is just a very poor augment also, by the way, so even though despite the fact that it does give combat, having to clump your team in a manner where you can get mentorship value just feels so bad, especially with Brand being sort of the big, like, clumping Punisher, and the fact that it's like one of, if not the most meta line currently in the field, let alone the fact that people are playing Vexotech and then you have Sejuani's. So it just feels so bad to clump. So Mentorship just has so low value currently in the current meta. Rerolls middle side get blistering, can't take that either because we have, I believe we have Morello, and then Pandora's items also doesn't really make a lot of sense. We could potentially take it if there were specific items that we were digging for or searching for, but realistically speaking, there's nothing that really comes to mind when it comes to Pandora's that we really want. And again, we kind of want to try to find some level of combat or value if we potentially can for this current stage. But realistically speaking, if we roll over Rolling for Days, which is an okay augment from this spot, because you do want to fish for Urgot at a certain point, and you want to roll on 8 and make it cheap, that helps, right? Rolling for Days because you get free rerolls. It kind of sucks a little bit though, because you really do want to find that tempo here. So again, you don't want to roll Rolling for Days here just because like it is the best option here given everything that you have. But at the end of the day, you're not like super happy about it because again, you really did want to make sure you got combat here. This up here is just practicing some very good habits here, just taking the units out that he doesn't want to keep and then just seeing what is available if you were to pivot into something. But doesn't find anything remotely interesting. Slams the Guard Breaker here as well, which I think is totally okay. Guard Breaker is just a very solid item to have, so that is totally chill. Goes on anybody really, and generally speaking, when it comes to playing Urgot, just keep in mind, you are playing 2 Executioner at the bare minimum, and that usually implies a Vex somewhere on your board. Nowadays, when it comes to Fast 9 and tempo into Fast 9 or Bill Gates boards in general, you are capping out as Urgot as your primary carry 90% of the time, I would say. Aurora, I don't think as an AP carry is strong enough or consistent enough because sometimes the way that she throws her ability around just looks like she just has a blindfold on and is just like spraying shit everywhere, hoping it does something. Something, me and your mom. But, ew. Here, as you can see here as well, he actually does end up rolling. I'm gonna move on. He does roll a little bit here on 7 just to find something that would make sense on his board. He ends up going with the 2 Vanguard here, which I think is perfectly acceptable. Also finds an early Vex, which is super nice. Sells the Sejuani. I think that makes a lot of sense. We are gonna be playing around Bruisers for the most part for our level 8, but this is going to be kind of where we are sitting. And again, in general, when it comes to playing tempo, you might notice his bench is super expensive, but you cannot be greedy with your econ here when you're playing tempo. High tempo always means that you're going to be wanting to hold like certain pairs and certain units that are going to spike your board tremendously, right? At the end of the day, we still have 3 Nitro in, but we don't want to like keep Nitro all the way to 9. Realistically, we want to pivot out of this as soon as possible because it's very, frankly, mid. Like, not even just mid, it's kind of shit. So we kind of want to like make sure that we move some of our units around so that we can have like something like 4 Bruiser, for example, to tempo with. 6 Bruiser right now is one of those things that you can definitely play into to tempo with. So that's definitely probably something that is on Dish Soap's mind here. Again, we do have Nitro in because it is our current strongest in. There probably is a world where you can move the items onto Vex, but we don't have any tiers, so it is a little precarious to say the least. We have an open bow here as well. We need to slam something. You probably do want to slam Crown Guard at a certain point in case it does win you the fight here. And I believe he does end up doing so. And it looks like we are fighting into a remotely pretty weak board, so we should be okay. But hopefully speaking, we can slowly pivot out of this Nitro as soon as we can and have something better cooking up. We do have the bow that is currently cooking right now, so we could think about like something like Vex items in the meantime. I think a Vex 1 is probably going to be enough with Boombot Crest to like get you to 9. You definitely want to hold the tier here at the very least because the tier is going to be a really good component regardless of whatever it becomes. Blue buff for Vex, but it could also be Redemption for the Bruisers in the front line. It could also be a lot of other things as well, such as Vow or even an adaptive, but I mean, there's no reason to slam adaptive here when they're, you know, you have components coming up in the next round. 3-6 here going into the fight. We are actually fighting a Shojin Marksman, i.e. Misfortune, which I know Misfortune is getting memed on quite a bit, but this Misfortune unit is by far a much better unit than Zeri. It's actually not even close. And Zeri is like the real shitter forecast of the current patch. So MF, especially with Marksman Crest, is actually a pretty decent unit here, especially for stage 3. So it is going to be good enough to beat Dish Soap here. And unfortunately, we do lose our streak going into neutrals, which kind of sucks because we would have been turbo rich going into neutrals here, but unfortunately, it just wasn't enough. We're still looking at our units here and our board as well, and I don't really see a reason to really take out of the Nitro just yet. Also, by the way, this Mr. Bombastic guy seemed to have gotten Cho'Gath too, so that is a bit concerning because, you know, we really wanted to hit Cho'Gath 2 like easily, especially if so many people are playing Forecast and none of them were playing Cho'Gath. It would have been a lot easier to hit our units, but unfortunately this is just the current situation. We do get another, 3 tiers coming out. I was gonna say 2, but 3 tiers coming out, 9 eggs as well for the encounter here, and then we're gonna push to 8 because we have so much money because of inflation, and we're gonna roll just a little bit here. Try not to roll too much, find the Cho'Gath as well, and maybe we can roll to about the end of the free rolls, maybe till about 30, but this is honestly probably more than enough. You probably don't have to roll more than this. He does roll slightly more, excuse me, but we end up rolling just a bit more just to try to find something here. He does find the Kobuko, which is really nice. Blue buff guard breaker for the Vex. That makes perfect sense. We are 5 Boombot, which is a bit unfortunate. We do have to get this Kog'Maw off our board. But all things considered, this is looking like a pretty decent spot. Typically speaking, when it comes to rolling down on your level 8, I think too many people focus on like a lot on like, I have to hit my 2-star forecast no matter what. At the end of the day, that's not going to always be the case, because if you have your 1-star copy, that's pretty good. If you hit your 2-star forecast, you're a bit of a high roller, unless you've been, you know, losing your HP throughout the whole game, and then that's your spot. But we'll go back to that in a little bit. 4-2 augments, Crown's Will, Mace's Will, and Ascension. Ascension, not clickable at all either. This is one of those gold augments that just feels really, really poor, just because a lot of fights seem to be determined within 15 seconds. So the fact that you're getting the bonus damage after that, it's like, it's redundant and it doesn't do you any good. So that's just not really great. I think if they increased the time from 15, or sorry, decreased the time from 15 down to like maybe 12 seconds, maybe we could see this augment become a bit more clickable, but there's probably some lever somewhere that someone needs to pull. Mace's Will is fine. It's not necessarily amazing because there's no item that we really want to slam with this. And Crown's Will, I remember watching this thinking Crown's Will sounds decent because you can get the Gunblade onto the Vex, but then you can't have, if you have Gunblade on Vex, then you can't have Guardbreaker on Vex. So because you have to keep the Boombot thing on there until you find a Garen for the mod. So Crown's Will, I'm not the biggest fan of, but I can see it, and I thought that that was probably the most appealing option out of everything here. Salvage Bin doesn't make too much sense as well. Bulky Buddy's health as well, and it looks like out of all these, Bulky Buddy is probably going to be the way to go. Omnivamp can't really be used by our team. Salvage Bin, we're not going to sell any of our units, so Bulky is going to be the way to be. And it makes a lot of sense because we're playing Boombot, and you actually dish out more damage with Boombot the longer your Boombot units survive, because for every X amount of damage, they deal back X amount of damage depending on how high you go in the vertical. I believe it's 400 damage, but I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, so don't quote me on that. But it looks like we got a redemption here for our 3-item Cho'Gath, which is super nice. We do have 4 Boombot, 4 Bruiser, Cho'Gath 1, and Vex 1, but this is probably going to be more than enough for us to be chilling on. So it looks like the GOAT is sitting on here with 30 gold already on 4-2, and our spot is actually looking pretty comfortable. 81 HP, we are not going to be beating a lot of boards, but this should be enough to, at the very least, bleed our way gracefully onto level 9. We are currently fighting a, I believe, a 206 Cypher Cash Out who played into Little Buddies. Holy shit. Vanguard Marksman. Little Buddy is one of the better augments for this line in general, so super, super cool to see that as well. And I think right now, this is sort of the point where people are really, like, turbo spiking their boards, by the way. Like, they are significantly stronger than what we currently have, because people have cashed out, they have rolled. We're seeing Brand 2, we're seeing Aphelios 2, we're seeing Sedge 2 with the Vex pair, we're seeing, you know, Zaya 2, we're seeing all of these different things. Rengar player doesn't hit, which is super great. And then I think the Yuumi player has also not hit as well. I think they're playing Cypher into, like, LeBlanc reroll. So that is something that we could, like, this guy, for example, is, like, maybe beatable, I think. But it's gonna be, I think this is winnable. It's close, but it's winnable. The Alawi 3 is actually super, super tanky. But blue buff Nashers into JG, or sorry, blue buff Manazane into JG is one of LeBlanc's better build, but it does seem like we do beat them here because they are not LeBlanc 3, and it looks like they actually, like, really, like, turbo low rolled their spot here. Didn't hit Galio 3, didn't hit LeBlanc 3, didn't hit Yuumi 3, so their spot's actually looking really, really bad. Going into the carousel as well, I don't think there's anything in particular we're really looking for. It's probably going to be like Urgot items in general, or just something that has like a lot of value here, like a lot of money to cost. Oh, so actually Declaw is actually pretty interesting here. Okay, yeah, cool. Declaw actually makes a lot of sense here. Declaw is probably best in slot for Cho'Gath, partly because the meta is so AP. Okay, wow. Partially because the meta is so AP centric right now, but also because Declaw actually gives a lot of really great resistances for Cho'Gath, and it helps him scale quite a bit with that passive HP percentage healing, I believe. So yeah, he has 9%. Oh, excuse me, he has 9% HP bonus max HP, which works very well with his Bruiser trait. Sorry, I was thinking about Anima Visage, which does the healing. It's just a little different. But it looks like we have 6 Boombot now for stage 4-5, which is super great. Definitely a bit of a high roll here, but nonetheless, still, I mean, you gotta play what the game gives you, and we are chilling with 6 Boombot, and actually 6 Boombot is gonna be probably the strongest during stage 4 here. So even if we do lose, actually we end up winning, but even if we do lose, it should be super, super close now, because 6 Boombot, again, it's one of those traits that historically speaking has been super strong, but then nowadays it used to fall off like a cliff, but nowadays it's actually super, super, like, it actually like holds itself up, if you will, for late game. And I think what people have noticed as well with Boombot is that people like to play Garen farm a lot of Boombot mods and just spread those around, so then that way your whole team is applying Boombot when they are getting attacked, which is super great. Also, really interesting decision here, by the way, in case you didn't notice, he actually dropped from 6 to 5 Boombot. The reason being is because of specifically the egg, and I think that really affects Dish Soap's decision making when it comes to whether or not he wants to play around like more components. So like maybe he wants to roll on 8 a little deeper, or maybe he wants to just say, okay, this is fine, I'm just gonna go 9 and see how it affects his game plan. So unfortunately, he does win here because he did want to sack, because if he did lose 1 here, then he actually hatches the egg here, and then going into 5-1, and he would actually know what's inside it, so that he could actually make a better plan. I think that's pretty interesting. I don't see a lot of people like sacking 1 here just to like make sure the egg hatches so they're better informed in their decision. I think most of the time players are just willing to scout and see what's going on, but it does make sense that ideally, instead of scouting, you'd rather just have the egg hatch for you and then see what happens. So it does look like we get chained here and a bunch of other stuff. Here's a lot more money, Mordekaiser 2, and it looks like the egg is hatching for this player, and it ends up being a couple components and a radiant item. So I think Dish Soap sees that and says, okay, that doesn't affect anything that I'm gonna do, therefore I'm just gonna level to 8 here, or level to 9 here rather, and then just roll a little bit, see what goes on. Find the Viego pair super early, but it's not something we can totally play onto our board just yet, and actually he sells the pair pretty early on. And the reason being is because Viego makes a lot of sense if you want to drop from 4 to 2 Bruiser, and then by doing so, you could probably create Viego plus Garen on your board, and then that way you can farm the mods while having a Viego on your board, and you know, providing a bit of extra frontline that isn't necessarily for Bruiser, but still providing a ton of value. You might have also noticed as well, Shift Slam from Dish Soap is really interesting here. I don't think it's a slam that I think a lot of players would initially think about. And the reason being is that because Shiv is one of the best items for Urgot when playing Boombot, because the Boombot trait actually procs so much AP damage. So getting Shiv here is actually super nice here, but obviously you do want some regular items here as well for your Urgot. He ends up finding a Royal Crown Guard as well for a Radiant item, which you move over the Cho'Gath, which the AP should be decently good enough for Cho'Gath. I can't tell you exactly what it does. I think it increases the amount that he heals and the amount of HP that he gets every time he hits, but I could be wrong on that. I could be misquoted, so someone can correct me if I'm wrong, which I probably am. He also ends up reforging his other Spark as well, because he did have Spark and Shiv, and then he reforges his current Crown Guard, ends up getting a sword with, I believe, the Morello. Or no, he gets another redemption instead, excuse me. And then, I mean, our spot's looking good. I mean, you have a lot of BV boys who could really love the damage reduction coming from redemption. We do have the Merlo and Urgot, which is slightly suspicious because I believe we don't have very many removers. Sorry, we're at 0. So that is a bit unfortunate because we do want to have 3 item real item Urgot. But because we've slammed the Morello onto him, we won't be able to actually move it until stage 6. So going on to the carousel here, if we find like an Urgot item, it's going to be a little awkward to say the least. It looks like we are fighting into another board as well. This is a super capped out Vexotech board, by the way. Radiant Nashers has got to be good on this unit. It's got to be good enough for sure. But it looks like even despite that being the case, it looks like he is still winning by far. And this guy's board is super strong, by the way. Support Mining Spirit Link and a full-on Vexotech board. But the Nashers is a bit low roll to say the least. Definitely there are better Radiant items, but this is still okay. Look at the carousel as well. I don't think anything stands out too crazy to me. Maybe Evan Shroud. I don't know if he has he doesn't take IE. I think that's okay. Evan Shroud I think is kind of nice as well. We do want the 3 item Urgot though, so I can understand why he takes the IE. But Evan Shroud would just guarantee that we had Armor Shred, and then going into stage 6 when we get an item anvil from the neutrals, maybe we could have found something instead, but that's totally fine. I think he's looking at his board as well, trying to figure out what else he can cut just to make things a little nicer. Definitely want to keep the Kabuko on the board just because Kabuko is going to be the best 5-cost thing that we can get, just because he does provide quite a bit of CC, which is super nice. And an itemized Kabuko too is actually pretty playable nowadays. So a little difficult to itemize him though from this spot, just because we would probably have to throw the Morello onto him and then move the IE out to Urgot. That's probably going to be the plan. But then, you know, you're not really getting like a true like 3 item Kabuko, but it's okay. Usually this unit wants stuff like Crown Guard, Adaptive, AP tank items, if you will, stuff like that. Scouting as well here sees this really crazy Rengar Jinx board, by the way. Suspicious Trenchcoat with a Royal Hodge, or whatever the fuck the Radiant one's called. So really strong boards that we are currently playing into. 4 Vanguard, 4 Marks is probably looking like the weakest out of everybody right now, but realistically speaking, like, this lobby is super fucking strong. Not much else to really say though. The game plan from this spot is really going to try to find Garen, try to cut the 2 Bruisers, try to find the Viego, get the Urgot 2, move the Morello onto the Kabuko, and then try to see how that goes out. Realistically speaking though, you don't want to also end the game with this Boombot emblem on Vex. Boombot emblem, like, even with 6, you don't really want the emblem on your carry unless you absolutely need to. The emblem itself doesn't provide too many stats. It just lets you access the vertical tree, and that isn't enough to really justify a whole item over it. But it's good enough, right? And I think at the end of the day, though, what really makes this Boombot line so good is because of the Garen mods. What you can actually do is if you farm a Boombot mod, you can actually pop the Boombot mod, or excuse me, Boombot emblem off the Vex here by putting the mod onto Vex, and then that will actually pop you off the emblem and you can move it around without the usage of a remover. Looks like we get the IE here. Warmog seems really the only clickable thing here. Maybe BT if you're like a true Kabuko believer, but even then, you don't even have Kabuko too. Morello onto the Kabuko makes a lot of sense here, i.e. DB Shiv for our Urgot too, and I think life is pretty good. Could potentially go level 10 as well. I don't see a problem with that. Most of the time, people don't like going 10 a lot just because you can put in units like Zac, for example, and farm like a fuck ton of Bloblets and then try to get like a Zac, like a Giga Zac going. But I mean, at the end of the day, if we were to roll here, we're rolling for like Zac, and we're also rolling for Garen, and then hoping that we like don't miss on the mod. I think it's justifiable both ways. I think you could roll here, but I also think you could just like push 10, and I think that's okay as well. And actually, if you push 10, you could probably keep the 4 Bruiser. If I'm yeah, you can keep the 4 Bruiser for sure, and actually get full bulky value across your whole board, albeit it's 4 Kog'Maw. But that way, you can keep 4 Bruiser, and it's actually not that expensive. Oh. He miscalculated. But he was trying to push down here. But you can actually keep 4 Bruiser in and actually don't have to pivot out of these units, and then you can just play it for the Garen and roll on 10 odds for that one Garen just to farm you those mods and still have a good time. Albeit though, looking at the HP of the lobby though, it's starting to get a lot closer to the end of the game here, so it's very possible that we might not even be able to have enough turns to farm the Garen, but this Rengar player is going to be like our biggest nightmare across the 3 battles here. It looks like we can roll here as well for like literally anything better than the Ziggs. I think it's only offering Cyber Boss right now, which isn't amazing. I think you can... Oh, interesting. Okay, so he holds the Kabuko pair here, which is good because you have to hold the pair. But realistically speaking, you probably do want to play the Urgot instead just to get that little bit of extra boom boom going on. So I like that he's holding the Kabuko pair here. I think it's correct, although it's definitely not ideal. And it looks like at the very least, because we push 10, we're definitely securing at least the top 2 for sure. And I think at this HP differential, I don't even think it's possible for this 18 HP guy to not go third. Yeah, I think at this point. Especially because I think this Trick P guy, I think this guy is actually like way too weak compared to the other 2 boards. So there's not much that he can really do here. Third item for Kabuko is probably the best thing that you can really ask for here, but nothing really stands out as well. I guess Runehands is okay. Just because you could get a second item for Urgot too if you find another Urgot. But at the end of the day, he finds the Garen here, so that's going to be it. Reforged, because why not? Sunfire, I would just reforge it again. Guardbreaker, that's okay. That's kind of like a third item for Vex, I think. So I think the way you can view it now, well, realistically, no, that makes sense. Yeah, so you go double Guardbreaker on Vex. So the idea being is that once you farm that Boombot mod, you could pop the Boombot emblem off the Vex, then move the Guardbreaker off that extra remover going into stage 7 neutrals, and then you should be able to have a full 3 item Vex. But at the end of the day, though, I'm not sure how I feel about that game plan because we are still losing, and I think the thing that really stands out to me right now is the fact that, and I think Dishel mentioned this on stream as well, but you don't have armor against this Rengar player. It's Rengar Jinx specifically, and we have Declaw, Royal Crown Guard, and Redemption. Redemption is more of a utility tank item, not really like a main tank item. So that is probably the thing that stands out to me. So actually, probably the best thing we can get out of the Anvil going into stage 7 neutrals is going to be some sort of armor item that we can tank with. So something like a Bramble Vest is probably the like #1 best thing you can get, but things like Gargoyles, things like Steadfast, kind of like these are probably okay. You really want to hit Bramble Vest if you can. That's probably like the only thing that really stands out, but it does look like we actually end up winning here, which is great as well. And I think looking back on the other fights, I think our Urgot kept walking up weirdly enough, so I think that might have been a big problem. Missed the Boombot, by the way, super unfortunate. So probably gonna be like Bruiser, or Bruiser's probably fine because the way that Rengar, yeah, Bruiser's probably fine because of the way that the Rengar targeting works, just because Rengar does try to target the lowest HP ally. So Bruiser onto the Urgot here, I think it's actually a really smart move. I don't think I would have seen that. I feel like we have Techie in. Yeah, I feel like I would have Techie the Vex if I was in this spot. But I mean, that's why he's the GOAT. Looks like going into the stage 7 here, gonna roll down a little bit, see if we can find anything of use, and nothing really pops up here. But it, oh, Garen too, but I don't even know if it really matters at this point, but we're probably gonna have to sell the Urgot and put something in. Looks like we're given, yeah, so Gargoyles or Evan Shroud, I think both are fine. I think Gargoyles is probably gonna be slightly better because this Cho'Gath's gonna probably be one of the last tanks standing, and so having that, you know, extra armor MR coming from the fact that everything is attacking him, I think is gonna be great. Declaw onto the Cho'Gath here, and Redemption either on, I mean, I guess on Gragas is fine. I think I would have put it on the Mordekaiser or maybe on the Garen here, but I guess it makes sense because the Gragas is going to walk up super late. But it looks like the fight is not even going to be close, and it's a win out for Dish Soap into first place. So that's going to do it for this VOD review. I hope this was helpful. Please like and subscribe if you found this useful. Yeah. But anyways, that's going to do it, and hopefully we have more of the top streamers playing, because I miss VOD reviewing top NA Challenger players, but they have all been having their streams off, man, so there's only so much I can do. Anyways, that's going to do it. Take care, guys, and happy climbing.